Hey everyone, welcome back to Get Ellievate with Ellie Talks Money. I am so excited to welcome you to another episode of our show today. You guys know that on the Get Ellivated show and podcast, I am all about helping entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, as well as aspiring entrepreneurs understand what they need to do to start, scale, and really just create a business that lasts in the right way and in the most effective way. So we have a varying number of guests on the show to talk to us about their experience in their business industry, as well as give tips that they can provide for you all who are watching to understand what to do and what to avoid in business as well, so that you have the long-term success we're all looking for. So today's guest is actually, I am almost a little bit starstruck because of the fact that she has just written a new book along with Stacey Abrams. They have achieved so many amazing things in their business over the last 15 plus years. And you all know Stacey Abrams as well has had a miraculous career. So just being able to speak to someone that knows her so well is really exciting. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, go ahead and like this video, and let's get ready to meet our guest. Listen, everything you need to change your life is already within you. You need to believe that it has to work or it has to work. You got this. Scale your business, make more money, create your best life, and let's get elevated. Welcome to the podcast. All right, y'all, welcome back into the show. So today's guest, as I mentioned, is the author of a brand new book, which is absolutely incredible. I've just started it. It's called Level Up. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself and tell you all about it. Lara, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes. So my name's Lara Hodgson, and I am a serial entrepreneur, which I think means I have unmedicated ADD because anytime I see a problem, I'm like, oh, I have to solve that.
Yes.
So back in 2004, I met Stacey Abrams through Leadership Atlanta. And we both started our entrepreneurial career together. We're both sort of reluctant entrepreneurs. We got dragged into entrepreneurship for life reasons. And so we started our first of 3 businesses back in 2006. And then since then, we have built 3 companies, the latest of which is the company that I still run today called Now Account. And just this past year, we decided that given the pandemic that we're all working through and the number of people that are starting businesses either out of desire or necessity, that it would be the perfect time to share all of the learnings that we have had as we've overcome our own obstacles. And so we've just recently launched this book called Level Up, and it's about rising above the obstacles that hold your business back.
Ooh, child, we need it. We all need to level up. I absolutely love that. And I read a little bit of the backstory. And when you say reluctant entrepreneur, I can really relate to that because I do think a lot of us business owners almost kind of got pushed into entrepreneurship, either because I know for me at the time I couldn't find a job. I was unemployed. It seemed like nobody was hiring me. Like they were all in a brigade to just not hire Ellie. So I had to start a business. What was kind of the backstory and the reason why you were pushed into it?
So it's interesting. Stacey and I had 2 very different but complementary reasons. When I met Stacey, I had been helping other people start their companies, and I was really good at it. I was not, I didn't have to be the founder or the boss. I was really good at helping other people scale their companies. Stacey was an attorney for the city of Atlanta, and we were both selected for the 2004 class of Leadership Atlanta. I found out that I was pregnant with my son, and that's what prompted me to start my own business, because I knew that I wanted the flexibility to be a great mom and still have a career. So it was really becoming a mother that sort of pushed me out on a limb to do my own business as opposed to helping others. Yeah. Stacey decided to run for office, which of course we all know was the start of a very successful
Yep.
career in the political side. But when she decided to run for state House of Representatives, she felt like there might be a conflict working with the city, but being an elected state official. And so she decided to start her own consulting firm. I was going to start my own consulting firm. We looked at each other and I said, "You're the smartest person I've ever met. We should do something together." She said, "Well, you're the smartest person I've ever met. We should do something together." And then we said, "What should we do?"
Yeah. Yeah. Let's combine this. Let's make it happen. I think that works so well. And what a good way to kind of just allow what's happening in life to push you into another zone without fighting it, you know?
I actually think it's the best reason to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we create this persona that an entrepreneur is sort of a cowboy that loves risk and wants to go jump off of a cliff. And that's not true. I mean, many of us are pushed or pulled into entrepreneurship for a variety of reasons, but it's that reason or that pain point that causes you to be a great entrepreneur.
Exactly. It's that pain point. So, what do you think is the best way for new entrepreneurs or aspiring ones who are thinking they want to start a business to really discover a pain point to solve? You know, how did y'all do that?
Well, I think the key is to focus on the problem, because a lot of people say, "I want to start a business," and they come up with an idea and then they have a solution in search of a problem. That's never a good thing. It's better to say, "What problem do I want to solve?" And if you can anchor on the problem, then the solution will present itself. So what I always tell people, if you think you want to do something, ask yourself, is there something that bothers you that either you experience and you'd like it to be better, or you've seen someone else experience it and you'd like it to be better? Because if you can focus on what you want to solve, then your passion will be directed in the right place.
Exactly.
When I was younger, it used to drive me crazy that people would say, "Do what you're passionate about." I actually don't think that's true. I think you have to be passionate about the so what, or the impact, or the problem, and then the solution will follow itself.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And sometimes we don't know what our passion is at all, you know?
I agree. The first time someone said, "Do what you're passionate about," the whole room got energized. And I was sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm passionate about." Not because I didn't have anything. I had a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I can be passionate about.
Yeah, and it can become hard to choose. So that's something I want to dive into as well. When you are a multi-passionate entrepreneur, just a multi-passionate person, what's the best way to say, "I'm going to focus on this"? You know, because we can be like this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're good. We're good at multitasking, right? I think the first thing I would say is give yourself permission to pursue a problem or a solution that's not in your area of expertise. And that's really counterintuitive. But a lot of times we create our own boxes because we think to ourselves, "Well, my degree's in accounting, so I have to do something in accounting." Or in my case, I'm an engineer. My schooling is in aerospace engineering, which is really good for rocket science jokes. But if I had said to myself that because my degree is in engineering, I can only do something in engineering, I would never have started any of the businesses I started. So if you think about it, Stacy and I started a consulting company that did work in infrastructure. We started a children's bottled water company. And the only background we had for that is I had birthed a child. That was my area of expertise. And then we started Now Account, which is a financial technology company. Neither one of us are finance people.
Wow.
But that's our gift, because if you're not necessarily an expert, then you're curious enough to ask all the stupid questions, because they're the best. Those are the best questions.
They are.
But I think a lot of people say, "Well, wait, I can't start a company unless I'm the expert." That's not true. Find a problem that you want to solve. You can always find experts to help you, but don't limit yourself to just your area of expertise.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think something a lot of people struggle with is imposter syndrome in business, so much.
For
And
sure.
what you're mentioning in that you don't have to be the best or the expert in that field. You just have to kind of jump in and align yourself with people.
Well, and I think if you think about where innovation always comes from the demand side of a problem. So I'll
Mm.
give you a perfect example. The inventor of GoPro, right?
Yeah.
You would think that that would have been a video expert. It was a surfer. And he recognized that it was really hard to take videos when he was surfing. So he experienced the problem, but he wasn't a video expert. You can
Hmm.
find video experts to help you solve the problem. If
Yeah.
you think about Uber, one would think that a taxi company would have come up with that. They were the expert, but that's not who came up with it. So I think it's, again, giving ourselves permission to see an idea, see a problem, and then harness the right people to create the solution without it being your own expertise.
Yeah, I think that's really key. So something else I wanted to talk to you about is you and Stacy have built these amazing businesses as partners, and a lot of even my students and people just ask questions. They want to go into business with someone, but they're nervous. Well, I don't know. What if, what do you think are some good ways people can vet the person they may be interested in starting a business with to really determine if that's the right kind of matchup?
That is such a great question. And I see people make mistakes on both extremes. Some people will say, I'm going to go find a person that I don't know at all, but their resume is complementary to mine. And that
Mm-hmm.
is a bad idea because
Mm-hmm.
the fact that someone has the right skill set doesn't mean they have the right mindset. And the mindset is what you really have to meld.
Yeah.
On the other extreme, I hear people all the time that say, "Oh, I'm going to go into business with my best friend." Not if you want to keep the best friend. you know and that's because you're too aligned. I think
Mm.
what Stacy and I discovered is we met during a program where we didn't know each other, but we
Mm-hmm.
got to see how we approached problems and build a level of respect that our character was aligned. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
what we knew was aligned. We are very different. Stacy and I are
Yeah.
different on almost every axis. But what we respected is that we both approach problems with a servant mentality, right? We want to help others. We have very clear lines between right and wrong. And so we got to a point where we ultimately respected each other's intent,
Mm-hmm.
but our lives aren't so overlapping that we don't have our individual time. We don't
Yes.
live next door to each other. We don't go to the same church. We don't have children in the same school. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important because Stacy and I often say that our superpower is the fact that we are different and that
Mm.
we can bring these different perspectives together. If our lives overlapped, then we would lose the diversity in thinking. So we
Yeah.
have the ability to come together, but we also have the ability to go to our own quiet space and sort of think about what we've learned from each other. So one of the things I would say is definitely vet someone more for their mindset than their skill
Right.
set. Like, are their
Mm-hmm.
goals in life aligned with you? Is their general sort of character compass aligned with yours? But then also make sure that you're not so like on top of each other every day that you don't
Okay.
have your own independent thought.
Yeah, that's so very important to be able to maintain that individuality because I think just as in a relationship, you are your best when you can be your best singularly and the other person can be their best singularly and then you can become great, in those moments together.
And I think the other thing too is we don't try to be each other.
Mm.
We bring different skill sets to the table, and I don't try to be her and she doesn't try to be me. And so, I think that's key because a lot of times I'm sure people look at us and go, "Wow, two alpha women. Oh, how's that going to work?" But it works great
Yeah.
because we're both confident in our own sort of lane, but I don't
Mhm.
try to play in her lane and she doesn't try to play in my lane. So our
Yeah.
lanes are really additive as opposed to sort of competitive.
Yeah. So it makes it different. Now, when you guys were starting businesses, social media wasn't what it is right now, you know? So I'm curious to know what you think the differences are and maybe even some other challenges between starting a business now in 2022 versus when you all started in 2004, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When we first started our consulting firm, like you said, there was no social media. So our ability to find customers and get our message out was purely relationships.
Wow.
And, you know, we joke that I will talk to anybody. If you sit next to me on the plane, I hope you don't want to read because you will talk to me. Um, I just love people, right? I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by them and I'm curious and I love to talk to people. And Stacy is the best listener you've ever met in your life. So we were really good at just, you know, reaching out to people and asking great questions. And then, you know, Stacy's got this great strategic mind. And then when we started Nourish, same thing. I mean, we were launching a brand. There was no
Yeah.
social media. You know what I wish we had was 3D printing because we made our first prototype out of duct tape. I mean, we like mocked
Wow.
up what this thing was going to look like. But I think, you know, the challenge today is your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. And on one
Mm.
hand, you look at social media and say, wow, it's never been easier to launch a brand or get your message out. But it's also never been harder to scale that message because it's so noisy, right? I mean, there's so much information everywhere.
So
So
much.
I think it really begs a clarity of message and an authenticity that maybe you got away with not having before. But, you know, I
Mm.
mean, that's one of the things Stacy and I have been very successful at is to your point, not only as individuals have we stayed sort of very true to who we are, but we're also very transparent about what we can do, what we can't do. I can remember one time we were given a presentation and somebody said, oh my gosh, like you need to pretend to be bigger and more sophisticated. I was like, dude, who's that going to fool? Right. Like
Yeah.
we are two
Authenticity.
ladies. We are two ladies in a little office. Um, and so we never had trouble sharing sort of our weaknesses and
Mhm.
asking for help. And I think, you know, in today's world, you have to do that because you can't put up a facade.
Yeah, it has to be real. It has to be authentic. And you're right, being that it is noisier, you know, there's so much information, and then there's so many other people starting the same business potentially as you know, it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, how do we make this differentiator?
Well, and
So
I
that,
think with one thing I would say for small businesses, I think with all of this noise, everybody is talking at entrepreneurs or yelling at them, and nobody talks with them. And in my mind, entrepreneurs are the heroes of the economy. So they're not the ones that need to be taught what to do. They are the innovators. We should be talking with them and asking them for input. You know, you go to these conferences and the room is full of entrepreneurs listening to big companies tell them how to do things. I'm like, shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't the big companies be in the audience listening to the entrepreneurs talk about how they've applied grit and scrappiness to overcome obstacles?
I love that because we are very scrappy.
We are.
You know, it's a scrappy thing. And I always say, you know, I feel like I just kind of like fumbled my way into my first $1 million. Like, let's just see how this goes. And then boom, here we are, you
Amazing.
know? And I think it's okay to give ourselves permission to not know how to do it. So, you know, statistically right now, the number of new businesses starting every single year is growing every single year. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's people are tired of not getting paid enough, or, you know, or do you think it's because it's easier now? What do you think is the reason businesses are rapidly growing?
You know, I think we're in a really interesting inflection point because, on one hand, as you mentioned, more businesses are being started than ever before. On the other hand, we're in a bit of an entrepreneurship crisis. And I know those two things don't seem to align. But what's happening is people are leaving the traditional workforce for a variety of reasons. Some people are leaving voluntarily because they're not finding purpose in what they do, or they're not finding appreciation for the role that they play. And others are leaving involuntarily because, I mean, the pandemic, economic changes. And so all of these folks are on paper starting companies. The crisis part is that the vast majority of those companies are really jobs. Meaning, if I start a company just to create a job for myself, but I never get the tools to scale that company to the point where I can hire other people, then all of these companies that are starting are going to shut down at some point when the founder decides they're done.
Right.
And for our economy, we need some of those companies to scale beyond the founder and create jobs and economic prosperity for their communities so that we can truly create generational wealth. And so that's the crisis part. But that's also largely why what you're doing is so important, and why we wrote the book, and why we started Now Account, is to give all of these entrepreneurs a fighting chance to get beyond the job to a sustainable company.
And I absolutely love that, because I think even for me in my own business, I think the challenge a lot of entrepreneurs face is not knowing how to let go and not knowing how to release the reins and bring someone in. I know in your book you talk about the different challenges and the hidden forces entrepreneurs face, but do you definitely think that the challenge of scaling is that we just don't know how to not do the job,
Well, for sure. And, one of the sub chapters in the book talks about the fact that sometimes what's holding you back is not a glass ceiling, it's a sticky floor. And it's exactly what you just said. At the end of the day, starting a business, it's very much like birthing a child. And when it starts out, the persona of the business and you as the founder overlap a lot, right? It's hard to draw the line between you as the person and the company. Over time, they start to separate, not too dissimilar from a child, right? I mean, when a child's an infant, they walk around with you, they can't go anywhere without you. But as they get older, as I appreciate now with my teenager, they want to be individuals, right? And they don't want to do what you want them to do. And, I think that companies are very similar. When they get to that point where they start to be the kind of gangly teenager, it's uncomfortable for us as the founder because our role has to change. And, we have to go from doing everything, which we're good at, being scrappy, to letting others take some of those pieces. And it's really hard. Like, that's the hardest part about being a founder. Even today, as we continue to scale, it doesn't get easier. I've abdicated some of the roles, but there's still meetings where people start talking and I want to jump in and I'm like, oh, I have to stop talking. Right. Which is really hard for me. It's really hard.
I can imagine that is so hard. So one thing I do want to ask you about, I talk to my audience a lot about funding for their businesses and just knowing when to get it, how to get it. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly in the Black community, it's a struggle getting anyone to invest in the business or even believe that the business will work. So what are some tips or resources you have for entrepreneurs who do need some startup capital? I mean, you don't always need it, but many times you do need a little money to get started.
Well, and it's interesting because, I think unfortunately we live in a world that kind of glorifies certain types of capital. And if you don't use that type of capital, you're somehow a lesser entrepreneur. And that is particularly unfortunate for people of color, women, et cetera, who don't have natural access to that kind of traditional capital. One of the things Stacy and I realized when we started Nourish, we tried to go out for that traditional capital, right? We talked to venture investors, we talked to banks about loans. And what we found was, not only did people not line up to make, loans or investments in women and women of color, but we also had a bottled water for babies company. It wasn't a sexy high-tech Shark Tank startup, right? And so we realized that our business didn't lend itself to that. And I think what the learning there is don't assume that the right capital for you looks like the way capital's always been structured. Mm-hmm. The first thing you should do is think about, what is my business trying to accomplish and what is the right type of capital? Because, again, I think we glorify all of this like venture capital and private equity. Less than 0.5% of businesses should ever use that type of capital. Yeah. And yet we're sort of telling people, like, if you're not venture backed, you're like a second class citizen. Right. You might start a cookie company. It should not have venture capital. Now, most people would turn their nose up, but I bet Mrs. Fields would argue that starting a cookie company is not a bad thing. Exactly. And so, I think this narrow focus on like high tech venture is very unfortunate, because it discourages women and people of color who might start businesses in other industries from even getting started, because they're just told no. Yeah. And so what I often say is, your goal is never to raise capital. Your goal is to do something. Your goal is to get a big customer or deliver on a big contract or hire people or build equipment. The capital is just the means to the end. Right. And a lot of times we get so caught up in the capital that we wake up every day and our goal is to raise capital. I can guarantee you that nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, I think I'll get a loan for fun, right? Like the capital is not your goal. But if we lose sight of the real goal, then we start chasing dollars and we end up catching the wrong one. And that will kill your business. Yeah. So I always tell people, before you even think about the capital, focus on, what is my business? Am I launching a cookie company? Am I launching a software company? Am I launching a marketing firm? How big do I want it to grow over what period of time? And then you can back into, what is the right type of capital? Is it a short-term capital need? Like, I just need some money to get started, and then it's going to, cash flow itself. That's a very different type of capital than, I've got to buy all this equipment and make all this product and have all this inventory. That requires a totally different type of capital. Yeah. And that's really why Stacy and I started Now Account. Is we tried to get loans, that didn't work. We tried to raise sort of venture capital, that didn't work. And all of a sudden we were like, wait a minute, our customers are taking 30 plus days to pay us. What if they just paid us immediately? What if we could get paid immediately like a retailer does when you swipe your credit card? We could use our own capital to grow our business. And that's really the best, because we wouldn't have to give up ownership. Yeah. And so it was really that recognition that if we could create a way to get paid faster, then we wouldn't have to be, part of the reason businesses have to borrow money is you just lent your money to somebody else. Yeah, exactly. You just gave yours away for free. So let's stop doing that and then go back to using our own money.
I love that. I think that that's really key, and I know everyone listening is really going to appreciate that, because I do think that they get discouraged, if it's not, like you said, if it's not VC backed, it's like, and
you're not a real entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've totally got to change that narrative, because that is one sect of funding, but there's also grants, there's business credit, there's small startup loans that you can get,
And I'll tell you, one of the best places to get capital is your own supply chain. Like when Stacy and I first started Nourish, we needed, I think it was like $60,000 to get the molds made. We didn't have $60,000, but one of our suppliers said, you know what? I could make the molds for you, and then you can pay me back with each unit that we produce. So we just amortized it over the first, however many thousands of parts that we made. So there's ways to get your partners to help you fund some of those things in a way that's very different than going down to a bank and signing personal guarantees, which puts your house at risk. And if you even have those assets, right? I mean, a lot of people are like, well, wait, you want me to sign personal guarantees? I don't have, houses and cars. I don't have anything to give you. So sure, I'll sign it. But I think those are the types of things, if we're truly going to get to a world of inclusive entrepreneurship where we have founders that are diverse, we have businesses that are diverse. The only way we're going to do that is to have capital that's diverse. Otherwise, we're forcing all these diverse businesses into a square mold that says, here's a loan, here's a line of credit, here's, venture capital. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I love that because it forces us to be a little bit creative, and you never realize what you can get just by asking, by communication, Closed mouth doesn't get fed, huh?
I like that.
I love that too. So my second to last question is, when it comes to scaling and hiring, and relinquishing that control, what are things that you all look for, or that you coach people to look for when making a hire? Because it's like inviting someone to be a nanny to your kids. You've got to choose well. So what are ways people can make a good choice on their hires?
So one of the things we talk about is that you have to hire patiently and hire patience. Mm-hmm. And what we mean by that is, one of the things we did is we always started people out as contractors so that we could sort of see how they work. They could see how we work. And it was a way to kind of ease into this fixed cost of having an employee that is wholly relying on you. So there's ways to use kind of contracting or consulting as a way to get people sort of part-time and let them scale. But what it also forces you to do is, most of us, what we do is we resist hiring until we absolutely need it because we're panicked. Yeah. And then we grab the first person that's available that says all the right things. And quite honestly, typically they look like us, right? Yeah. Because the person you're the most comfortable hiring is somebody who reminds you of yourself. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is then you don't end up with a diverse workforce. So I think it's always important, before you need to hire someone, to start bringing people in to be around your company just part-time, right? It can be hourly, it can be on a project basis. So what you're doing is you're building a pipeline of people that you can see if they sort of fit the mindset that you want for your company, and then, bring them in as you need it. But it is important to look beyond just skill sets. One of the biggest mistakes Stacy and I ever made is we brought in a group of people that on paper looked like the dream team, right? This was the Olympic team. We had all these complementary skills, but we hadn't taken the time to understand each person's kind of goals in life and where they saw themselves. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a startup, not only do you need to be patient and find the right person as opposed to the right now person, but that person has to be patient, because your scale will not be a smooth, beautiful curve like you drew it in your PowerPoint, right? It's going to have fits and starts. And there's times when that person may love working with you and want to come on full time and do more, but you can't afford it yet. So they also have to have the patience to kind of work with you as you scale.
I love that. I think it is it's almost the same as looking at a partner. It is, they've got to be willing to give a little bit. You've also got to be willing to give a little bit. And I think that is why when we look at businesses, and when we do hire people, those people stay for a long time, typically, I think because it becomes a deeper relationship. So,
and I think you just have to be honest with each other, right? Yeah. You have to set expectations and constantly revisit them so that people don't get their expectations out of whack.
Yes. Ooh, because expectations, don't do it. Just allow people to perform as they would. Wow, I've learned so much in this interview. I'm so grateful. I always ask this question at the end of all of my podcasts, and that is, if you were seated right here in front of God or whomever you believe in, and you could ask for one thing, and he would say yes, what would that be?
Wow, that is an awesome question. I think for me, it would be time. And I think I don't necessarily mean more hours. I think it means time so that I could appreciate my hours more. I think as entrepreneurs, we're often so busy. And one of the most common things we say is, oh, I don't have enough time. And I read a great article one time that said, when you say that sentence, you're the object. It's as if the world has conspired to steal your time. if you rephrase that to say, I choose not to have time for that, then you have to say to yourself, ooh, did I make a good decision? Like if I were to say, I choose not to have time to go to my son's soccer game, does that feel right?
Exactly.
So I think, having sort of that clarity of being in the moment and making the most of our time, that's what I would want.
I absolutely love that. And I choose to not have time for this is key.
Time. It's sort of it's my litmus test on, did I make the right decision?
Yeah. And it puts some more accountability in it versus saying, there's no time. Well,
yeah, there is. You just chose to fill it with something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lara, please tell us how we can get your book, how we can stay in touch, how we can also support your companies as well.
Absolutely. So you can get the book obviously at Amazon or Barnes and Noble, but I also love to support small businesses. So if you are lucky enough to live near an independent bookseller, we love to encourage people to support those independent booksellers. You can also, of course, get it online if you're not lucky enough to live near an independent bookseller. We also have at the back of the book, there's a QR code that will take you to our secret website so you can join our movement. And it's leveluptoday.org, but there's a QR code in the book. And then you can also reach us through nowaccount.com, which is our business website as well.
I am so excited. That's fantastic. Well, you guys, this has been an amazing episode. I want you to comment below any questions you all have. So maybe we can have a part 2 to this because
love that.
We learned a lot today, and I am super, super grateful. Thank you again so much, Lara, for helping the audience get elevated, and I will see you very soon.
Sounds good.
So if you want to be on the next episode of Get Elevated, or if you want to be in touch with me and the team, then you can email podcast@getelevated.com or find me on Instagram and email me at hello@ellietalksmoney.com. Either way, we cannot wait to have you on the show and have you apply to be a guest for a part of the live business coaching. I'll see you guys soon.